Hey, hello, friends. I guess we'll give it another minute or so. And while we're here, I'm going to throw in the chat the link to the information page on the studio so that everyone can have that in front of them as they're thinking of questions and things. Let me just get that in the chat. Zoom makes my computer incredibly hot. Okay. Okay. Okay, so I just shared with everyone the link to the information page that we have about the Soundstage. The sort of primary thing that we're discussing today out of kind of urgency is the Soundstage applications, because those will be due with registrations on Monday. So want to answer any questions about that. We've put out a bit of information. I'm sure some people have seen some, but I want to make sure that we didn't miss anything in terms of covering all the bases there. So we are also joined by some of our production staff. Katie McClellan is here. So she and Evelyn and Taylor are all here. So they can answer more like tech-specific questions that I don't know about. But then if we have general questions about Fringe Festival participation, and some of you I've already met with, and maybe we're in like the middle of a discussion period, but we can throw those in so they're helpful for everybody. So does anyone have a question that they want to start off with? This is a little more of an informal situation than our last town hall, which was very planned, and we had a sort of presentation and then question and answer, but this one's just, I just want to answer the questions here.
I just have some technical questions about what kind of cameras you'll be shooting on and what kind of like media you'll be able to leave with. If you know answers to any of that yet, or maybe if that's on the info page. I was just scrolling through and I didn't quite see it, but.
Hi, Ben. This is an answer that we like kind of have. Right now we've got a couple of different, we're buying two, ideally, basically mirrorless DSLRs. Technically mirrorless, not actually DSLRs. We'll be filming, they cap out at 1040p. We're not sure exactly what file type we want to be exporting to people. I think that that'll be kind of dealer's choice. But if you're doing a recording session, we'll give you sort of the raw video files, which we will be recording from the cameras, and then the audio files we will be recording through our audio system onto the same computer. But you'll get them separately, and we'll just have to slate and things like that.
Tiny follow-up, do you know how, what's the maximum duration that they can record for in one go?
If they're recording onto a native SD card, they record for 30 minutes, but I believe that if we're recording through something like OBS onto a hard drive through a computer, they can record indefinitely. That is a thing that we'll need to test to make sure.
Thank you for asking that, Ben. I don't know any of those acronyms. Does anyone else have a question that we can answer about Soundstage, about registration, about the application process, anything? Ken, I think your microphone is off if you're speaking.
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so we're coming from Washington, D.C. I just wanted to get some general information. So I just wanted to find out if, for us, the only thing that's practical is the pre-recorded possibility. And I wanted to just see how long would that, we have like a 70-minute show. How long would it take us to just go up there to Philadelphia and pre-record it I'm just seeing if this is practical or not.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just a general question.
Yeah, Katie, can you speak to the timing a little bit?
Yeah, as of right now, we have planned every artist to come into the space for 1 8-hour day. So in our minds, just the standard schedule would be 4 hours to like tech and rehearse, and then a meal break, and then 4 hours again to record.
So in practical terms, do you think it would take that long, or could it be like much shorter?
Yeah, if it needs to be a shorter day, that's great.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we can't give you more time. But yeah, I think it also depends on the complexity of how many different shots you need, especially if this is pre-recorded. I think there's a lot of people can make it very complex, or it can just be straightforward with just lights and people on stage.
So this is the last part. So if we did this, it would be like maybe in August, and like on a Saturday or a weekend, or how would that work generally?
So we're still determining what that schedule is going to look at depending on what our registrants are, but we're thinking it'll be a Monday through a Friday, and it'll probably be in mid-July. And then for those that are going to be doing the live recording during the festival, that'll maybe be in the first 2 weeks of the festival, but still all TBD.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so dates will be determined, like the shoot dates will be determined once the group of artists are selected that are able to utilize this program. We have limited space for this program, so it'll really be about working together to put a schedule together that works for everyone. So there'll be a little bit of flexibility. But again, if you are not able to take advantage of this program and come down to Philadelphia, you can certainly participate in the festival remotely by submitting a digital piece. So
Yeah, that's what we thought most likely, but I wanted to check this out to see if it was practical or not.
certainly. And did you see the information that we have available on our website about the program?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
I have another question. Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh, Brenna, did you have a question?
This is very general. I have a couple super general questions, but
Awesome.
here's my first super general question. So first off, this is great. Thank you so much for putting this together. I'm looking at sort of the 8-hour time block. How did you determine in terms of like how far an actor who's unmasked, who's recording, should and would be inside, like an inside space with your technicians? This is not a challenge question at all. This is a learning question. So
Yeah, I think it's a good question to ask because I actually have seen that some other theaters and some other venues have reached out to me about the idea of recreating a system like this. So if we can answer those questions, I think that would be helpful if people are doing this not in our space elsewhere. Katie, do you have an answer for that distance question?
Yeah, so in our space, we are gonna delineate certain, we're gonna call them zones that people can be in, and that's gonna be denoted by a lanyard. So say you're an actor and you have a green lanyard, that means that you can be on the theater floor, in our rehearsal studio space, as well as the backstage area. And then if you're a crew member, say you're wearing a yellow lanyard, and that means that you're only in the risers and the sound booth and the third floor bathroom. So there's no interaction. And then our performance space for the camera area, that's about 10 feet by 17 feet. And with the 6-foot socially distanced guidance, only about 1 to 3 performers can be in that space at a time. So there, and between that stage and where the first technician will be, which will be our lighting booth, which Evelyn will be in charge of, that'll be in like the second or third row of the risers. So yeah, there'll be plenty of space between people. And if any adjustments on stage need to be made for audio or lighting, we'll ask the actors to leave the space, and then the staff will come down and make adjustments, and then we'll come back.
Okay, so like some of your best practices right now feel like if actors are unmasked in a larger area, because you have a large, big, beautiful space, but if they're keeping socially distanced 6 feet away from each other, then you feel like they can be unmasked in this space.
Yes, and we make it very clear that you're only unmasked if you're like performing. If you're not and you're like want to wait on the sidelines before you have to go on, we ask that you keep your mask on.
So there is a degree of like personal choice in your actor group and in your performer group. So there's no audience involved. So we're not asking like outside bodies to get involved in this. But if you on your team determine that this is something you want to do and you feel safe and comfortable with doing it, that is up to your team. So there's not an outside risk factor of other bodies other than those that choose to be in the performance.
Yeah, that's great. Just sort of like getting a general sense of what the best practices are. And, you know, thanks for helping to shape those.
Yeah, and also just to let you know, the space will be cleaned daily as soon as people leave. And we have we'll have hand sanitizer everywhere. We also recommend that people wash their hands. And there's a whole list of guidelines that if, you know, you get this opportunity, it'll outline everything very, very clearly. And always happy to answer more questions if you need more answers.
Ben, did you have one that you were, before we jump to Brenna?
I don't know that I exactly remember what I was going to ask, but so you said 1 to 3 people in the performance space. Is that, I guess I was wondering about, you know, we have a show with a cast of 6 people. Is there any way that you could accommodate that? Or would that have to be, like, would we have to think about ways of only having 3 people in frame at a time? Or, I mean, we're doing acrobatics, so everyone is staying socially distanced except when they have a partner who they touch. So it would be theoretically possible, I guess, in that space to have people on top of each other and still those pairs being socially distanced from each other. I don't know. I'm just curious, like how hard and fast that rule is.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And again, there isn't any clear guidelines. A lot of our guidelines have been written from the CDC and a lot of what the cities suggested. We've had a couple of conversations with a few other people that have been really helpful in guiding this with us. One of the like flexible things that they've kind of said is that if you are kind of like in a pod and you've quarantined with these people and you've experienced a lot of time with these people and you're not worried about being infecting each other, then yes, I think that's an opportunity. But if you're like, if say 6 people and it's 2 people that's a pod and 2 people that's a pod and there's 2 people that's a pod, I think as long as they can keep that 6 feet distance between all of them, that would be the flexible version of that.
Yeah, and again, there are guidelines around we cannot have like performances indoors because those performances include audiences who are asking to take the risk to come and join us in the space. But when performers come together and create their work there, it's a little bit more flexible because we're not opening that up to the public. So if you and your team are mutually taking that risk, and then we'll maybe have some sort of like aftercare guidelines for like, maybe you all came together and you should self-isolate for 2 weeks after that. But that is like a personal choice situation, whereas hosting a performance, asking audiences to come in, that's a little bit different.
And I remember my other question, sorry. It's 2 cameras. If we were interested in bringing another camera and another camera person, and we were still under the 7-person team limit, would that be a potential thing that could happen as well to get another angle?
Separate camera person would be possible. I don't know the level we wouldn't be able to take that camera and send it to a capture card to be able to record it onto our computer unless you brought in also another capture card. But if you want to bring a 3rd camera to shoot onto an SD card that's contained within it, that would be fine as long as you stay on the side of the green tape that artists are allowed on and stay away from our side. Also, because you mentioned acrobatics, I just want to mention that we've built a ceiling for the soundstage. So it's lower, the grid is at like 26 feet. The ceiling of the soundstage is at 15. So just so you know, it does have a top now.
another super basic question. That's sort of more best practices. So in terms of cleaning out the microphones and between uses, like, can you just tell me a little bit about that and what the best practices are you think for that is?
Sure. My name is Taylor. I'm the head of audio at Fringe. And every day I'll be cleaning all of the microphones in between performances, of course. But we will have kind of a standard of each microphone can only be used by one performer per day. So if you have a wireless microphone, you are stuck to that wireless microphone and you can't like pass it off to your fellow performers. So I will work with whoever needs to make sure that you have the number of microphones that you need and that we stick one person with one microphone so that we're not worrying about germs spreading between people. We also have like pop filters that will go on top of each of the wireless handheld microphones, and those can be taken off and washed as well, so that if we do ever feel that we need to swap out one of those covers, you know, say someone sneezes on the microphone and we feel like it's covered with germs now and we need to make a quick fix, we will have alcohol swabs and covers to the microphones that we can switch quickly as well.
Do you think that it might be possible to sort of include textually at some point some of the things that you yourself are doing to keep the microphones clean in between uses? So sort of a little less like zeroed in on like the moment to moment with the studio, but sort of like best practices for using microphones. Does that make sense? Like what you're gonna do in between, since you're an expert.
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to do that. Is that something that you think would be helpful to have like on the application, just out there in the world so that everyone knows?
I kind of honestly do. I kind of at this point feel like almost anything in the world that anybody knows how to do, like that anybody else can read about, is just great. So if you're willing to share the information, like
Yeah,
I know I would find it useful. So thank you.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, Brenna, I think that that's helpful in terms of knowing that this is sort of like an emergency effort that we're putting in right now to respond to a problem that a lot of artists are having, which is not being able to record their work in a high quality way or not having access to recording equipment. And I think it's a great idea to track what we're doing and share that with our community. I will also say, like, this is kind of an experiment. This is like what we're doing this for the first time, and we're asking a lot of questions ourselves to like professionals that actually have more answers. So anything we're putting out is sort of like an ever-changing and ever more informed practice that we're doing. So we don't have a guide that we're going by because this is kind of new territory.
Yeah, and again, that's really awesome. I guess one of the things I'm really glad to have access to is basically, I know that you all have an expertise in a lot of technical elements, but you also know the people to ask to get best practices for maintaining and carrying and keeping best, you know, like, so just, you know more, and I'm just thankful to benefit from that knowledge and hungry for it. So that's all. Not a challenge, and definitely know we're gonna like learn more as we go.
No, I think that that's very helpful, and I thank you for that.
Yeah, and hopefully Brenna and everybody else, we're working internally to create like a safety guidelines for our space. So we're gonna try to make that public, hopefully before the festival. But it's a lot of information to reach out to people about. So, and we were more than happy to share that with the community. So it's a great point.
Anyone else have questions about the soundstage, the application process, or thoughts that they would like to bring up? Or about this new Fringe Festival in general, this new experimental 2020 business?
Another super general question, but I'm wondering for your programming, what are you going to use to live stream? Where is your live stream going to go?
Katie, do you want to?
Yeah, so Katy Dammers probably knows more than I do.
So Brenna, I feel like you're maybe asking about our curated programming as well. So I can speak briefly to that. You know, April manages independent artists. Myself and my partner, Zach Blackwood, we're artistic producers that work on the curated slate of programming. And like our IA artists, we are in a totally different experimental world and are working with a slate of artists to do work that will be primarily digital. And there are many different formats or like structures that we're doing. We're going to be doing some live performances via Zoom, so that will look somewhat similar to this. We're going to use some that are kind of, Evelyn kind of alluded to this, using UBS, I think that's the right acronym, sorry if it's not, to stream to multiple platforms simultaneously. So you can watch something on Facebook or on YouTube or Discord, which is a platform many people use to play video games on and then to discuss them at the same time. We're also going to be doing some performances that take place outside. So performances will come to you, but at a safe distance, or other performances that will take place outside, but will be solo experiences. So you can access them, whether it's via a podcast or some kind of recorded media that might be kind of like a guided walk or a series of meditations or experiences or scores that you as an individual audience member can activate in a socially distanced way at a time that works for you. So it's a lot of different things happening simultaneously, which makes sense. You know, as a contemporary presenter, we want to follow artists and support them as they experiment, as they do new things. But as a presenter, we also want to make sure it's accessible for audiences too. So both for our IA artists and our curated artists, any audience member can access that material through our website. So similarly, as our website is our central ticket hub to purchase access to performances in this new digital space, it will be our central access hub to experience work digitally, some of which will be paid, some of which will be free. And so just keeping that clear for everybody that it will still continue to be easily accessible. I'm sorry if it's a little loud, but that's a little bit of information about curated shows. We'll be doing a press release with the full names of all the artists, hopefully by the end of this month. So you can look out for that in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And then all of our tickets, both for IA and for curated artists, will go on sale in early August.
Brenna, were you asking specifically if some of the curated program will be recorded from the same soundstage?
No, I mean, very simply, I was asking, are you planning on, because the soundstage is doing live streaming, and so do you foresee your curated shows being live streamed on something like YouTube? Are you going to use YouTube?
Yeah, so we are, currently working with artists to make some of those decisions, figuring out what's the best plan. We are definitely going to do some pre-recorded media that then will premiere of sorts on YouTube. It may also use Vimeo. We're still working with the designer to see what's best. But I do think it is possible that we will do some live streams on YouTube, particularly for what we're going to be calling the digital bookstore. So those are contextual talks and activities that give some additional information, research, and background related to our performances. And for as much as we're able to, we're going to try to stream it to simultaneous platforms so that people who are more familiar with YouTube can use that. For people for whom Facebook is easier, they can use that. So just trying to make it as easily accessible as possible.
Yes, and we don't dictate the independent artists using this program or recording on their own. We don't dictate a platform for them to use, and we're trying our best to figure out how to accommodate ticketing and different ticketing options for all of these different platforms, whether it be YouTube or Vimeo or a Zoom, and it all just depends on that artist practice and that audience experience. So even if an artist is utilizing the soundstage, they can still use whatever platform they like to present that work, as long as we can find out a way to like stream it and ticket it with our system. And Ben, does that answer your question, Brenna? Is that helpful?
Yeah, mostly. I'm just curious about how you're planning on live streaming stuff. That's all.
Okay.
Like what platforms you're using. So thank you.
I am finding, and in conversations that I'm having, we have about 100 artists that are registered to participate in this year's festival so far. And I am finding that Zoom seems to be the winner right now in terms of recreating somewhat of an audience experience where people feel like they're in the room, even if they're not on screen with you. But then those artists that are doing more just like openly available content that doesn't require time-based like interaction, YouTube and Vimeo are the the ones that are coming up. And that's just anecdotally in conversations and in information that artists are submitting. I also think audiences are becoming very familiar with Zoom. So it feels like one less step in sort of convincing someone to access your work when this is something that we're all kind of getting really used to right now. So Zoom seems to be up there right now.
Thanks for sharing that. That's really awesome thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm. And Ben asked a question in the chat. I lost it now. Oh, do you anticipate the slots in the Soundstage will be very competitive? We'll say that they are limited. And like I said, there are 100 artists registered in the festival right now. And all of those artists, other than those that have decided to do socially distanced, safe, outdoor, IRL in real life performances, they have access to apply to this program to record. So I don't know if competitive is the word, but we will have to select based on feasibility of the performance and accommodating the performance, and also just know that there are very few slots available. And that's mostly because we need to ensure everyone's safety and be able to like clean between. It can't be, you know, sort of, what's the word scratch night style where it's just back to back. That's no longer in the cards. So it would be great to just pack everybody in. So somewhat competitive, and we'll be having follow-up conversations with artists to determine feasibility. Can I answer any other questions right now? Or are there any thoughts from the Fringe team that they want to throw into this group that to give a little bit more context? Obviously, as I said, this is sort of an experiment. This is sort of a really quick process that we created out of like an emergency need. So we'll be kind of keeping on updating everybody as much as we can, and we understand that there's going to be a lot of questions. So this was sort of our first hope to just get a couple people in the room, talk through some things we might not have answered yet. And I really thank everybody for asking your questions and for having your questions and for participating in this year's Fringe Festival, which is a new experience for everybody. Does anyone have anything else before we head out?
Yeah, just one comment that if you're an artist who maybe doesn't have the best video editing skills or audio editing skills, we are compiling a list of technicians who do have those skills, and that will be made public hopefully in the next 2 weeks so that you can reach out to them and perhaps hire them for your project. So you don't have to be alone if you're not a tech savvy person.
That's really awesome. Thanks for putting that out there. Do you guys foresee having any town halls with sort of other technicians who've done digital work? Not necessarily artists who have not artists who transitioned, but technicians who've been working with this, that town halls with that coming up in the future?
Yeah, I expect us to have a lot more town halls, and for the topic points of those town halls to be based around the need that registered artist group has. So once we get all of those, that registration closes out on Monday, and once we see what that group of artists looks like and what their work looks like, we'll sort of know what is the largest target that we need to focus on in order to schedule those town halls. And I think having a town hall with someone that's has live stream experience more than we do, I think that would be a helpful one, and seems to be what people are gravitating towards.
Obviously some Zoom experts too.
Maybe some Zoom experts. Yeah, we gotta find those Zoom experts. So once we collect that group, that little cohort of the participating artists, I will be sending out some questions about what they need the most advice on, and that way we can determine the town hall format. But obviously we're here to help and answer questions along the way for anybody. So if you ever want to just set up a one-on-one meeting, that's totally fine. But it is helpful to answer the most pressing questions to the largest group possible, so I'm not having so many one-on-one meetings answering the same things. So we'll put that on the town hall list. All right, does anyone else have anything before we go? Just a quick reminder, registration and applications are due on Monday, June 22nd. All right, if not, I want to thank everyone for joining us. And if you have any questions or follow-ups or think of something later, please email me at april@fringearts.com. And I can answer those or set up a meeting with someone that could answer them better. All right, thank you, everyone.